thing is going to be a stretch for all of us. This is interactive, and I'm going to show you a slide, and I'm going to ask you all to stand up and move to the side of the room that you feel is your place that you belong, okay? And you don't have to come to the front, you can just go to the side, and if you're on that side, I'm sorry, you may have to go to the other side. But this is an exercise in, I don't know what, but we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, so everybody stand up. Okay, move to the side of the room that is your home. Normal on that side, abnormal on this side. I'm not giving you any clues. Just pick your side. Pick where you belong. Okay. Is everybody where they belong? Now turn to someone next to you and tell them why you picked where you're standing. You have like 2 minutes to talk about this. Anybody want to share their thoughts about this? Yes.
I thought about what is normal, or am I normal? I'm not phrasing it correctly, but I thought when I feel that I feel okay in my skin, I feel good in my skin, I like myself, I think that's what the definition of normal is, feeling good about yourself and feeling good in your own skin. But I don't want to be with normal people. So I think the society's definition also is in my head, because I definitely don't want to be with normal people.
Yeah. Groucho Marx thing, you know, about you don't want to be in a club that would have you as a member. Anybody else want to share any thoughts? Yes.
I don't think there's anything normal or abnormal. Everything is just the curve. When you're more to the right or more to the left, so we are all normal.
Or not.
Or not.
Anybody else? So, I'm sorry.
Well, for one, my name is Storm. For another, I chose to follow something that was a little outside. It wasn't outside the directions, but I think it was outside of most of our perceptions of the directions, and sometimes there's an important difference. And I chose to be one of the people in the middle, which wasn't offered as a specific choice, which I think is a different choice. And I chose that because, for the most part, I feel comfortable with normal, but I have some very, very different thinking on many different things. And I'm also very respectful of people who have different thinking, and I try to help everybody understand each other and get along.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that about the middle, because I was going to ask that. And it's really, how many of you stood in the middle on purpose? Interesting. Okay. I didn't want to offer it. I wanted to see what would happen. So,
I also think that there are different times of your life. You're normal and abnormal. And there are different conditions. And a lot of it is self-imposed. Feeling that you don't fit in. So it's evolving.
yes. And this is coming from a woman who taught special ed for 37 years. So she's had, because a lot of tonight is going to be about education and how we approach it and how our country approaches it. So I'm just adding that framework in. Anybody else? By the way, I'm not doing all these questions for only only one reason. It's also because we don't have a whole film. So a lot of tonight is really conversation and exploration. So it's as much a part of tonight as the film. So please don't mind all this stuff because it's a part of everything. Okay. Who was it?
I just think that we have to be happy with ourselves, and when people look at us and think you're abnormal or normal, it's their perception, not yours, and so you have to just keep chugging along and being yourself.
I think that like the idea of normal is kind of just like an average of a lot of different concepts. So it's more of like a stereotype, which is why I was like, there are parts of myself that are stereotypical of like an accepted version, and there are parts that are not, which is why I kind of stayed in the middle. But I think that if you actually talk to every person, they wouldn't follow like a cookie cutter idea of what a person should or shouldn't be.
Right? Good. Yes.
I apologize for my laryngitis, but normal is such a subjective word. And as a former teacher, when students would say, well, that's normal, I'd say, do you mean that's not familiar to you? Because normal to them is not normal to you. And being subjective puts shame on people. So it's a terrible, unless you're talking about lab results or something. Normal's a terrible.
Thank you. Anyone else? So we're going to be having a lot of different discussions about normal tonight. I've been working on this project now for 10 years. And my relationship with normal is very complicated. And so I'm trying not to say very much because I'm afraid if I do, I'll color what you're seeing. And I don't want to do that. I'll talk about it more later. But for now, I think what we're going to do is show you some clips from the film. And this film does look at how our society's definition of normal has marginalized people who think and learn differently. And because I don't want to take for granted that you saw the very short clips that were on the website, it's only a minute and a half, we're going to show those again. And then we're going to go into another clip that sort of looks at this from another perspective.
I don't think there's a normal brain because everybody has a unique brain. Everybody has a unique thought process. Everybody thinks in a different way. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us, I could say, human. But some people might not understand.
Once a society constructs the idea of normality, then there is a need to identify its parameters. So the techniques that are used to create the parameters of normality become the tools to identify which people can belong in a society and which ones cannot. That is the tyranny of normal.
My hope for the future of normal would be that we would, as a society, start to step back and question, why are we obsessed with this concept? Why are we so concerned about producing and reproducing things and people in our own image?
As we enter a deeper understanding of the world, the term normal and the term diverse lose their meaning. These are places in a beautifully complicated neurobiologic space. And normalcy means nothing in this space. If science is allowed to blossom and be creative in embracing atypical perspectives, then I believe that our new normal will be one in which the full range of human experience is not categorically seen as A or B. The tension between the push away and the push toward is something that I would love to see a future without.
The world is changing really fast. And when we look to our leaders, what should we do with these changes? We get different answers. So one of them is, this is really scary. You should be completely freaked out. The other one is, pretty cool. We're building a new world that you're a part of, and you're going to participate in helping to create. And it's going to look different. It's going to feel different. But there's a place for you in that world. That's a possible future. But we only get there together by turning toward each other and by building the structures and the stories to make it real. So the process of othering is basically saying you don't fit in, you don't belong. At the more extreme version, it's like you're a threat, you're danger. Sometimes we respond by saying, okay, people shouldn't be other. We're all the same. And I call it saming. Blacks are no different from whites. So come on in, but be just like us. Gays are no different than straight people. Come on in, but be just like us. But in that process, you're erasing people. You're saying, in any way you are different, the burden is on you to change.
So that's setting the stage for what we're going to see in the clips, and how our society is framing the notion of normal. Because the next thing you're going to see is 3 very short glimpses into our education stories. 3 very different children, very different locations, very different scenarios. And they're all kids that have learning differences that are trying to find their way through the school system. So I started thinking about this and why they were all having so many challenges. And I decided yesterday, this came to me while I was swimming. I just get these ideas when I'm in the pool. I don't know. But sometimes those are the best ones. What is the mission of our U.S. Department of Education? So I looked it up, and this is what I found. Okay? What is wrong with this mission? Anybody want to offer some thoughts about what might be wrong with this mission, or what's missing from this mission? Yeah.
Human beings.
Thank you. There isn't a single word in there that has to do with humanity, with compassion, with empathy, with happiness. There's no goal there about making human beings, right? That's one. Anything else? Sorry? Yeah.
How do you define achievement?
Right. And what is achievement if you're not happy? You're human, right? Okay, another thing that for me was the biggest thing is equal access. So equal means everybody can walk in the same door and can sit in a desk in the classroom if they're able to sit. Identical resources, tools, or opportunities to everyone, regardless of their individual needs. That's equal access. Equitable access accommodates the individual needs of the learners. There is nothing in the mission of our U.S. Department of Education that has anything to do with equity. Oh, right, that's one of the bad words. What's one of the other bad words? Inclusion and diversity. Okay, these are all the things that we're looking at tonight. And none of them are anywhere in this Department of Education, which is basically on the chopping block anyway. So that is the stage that is set for these 3 students that you're going to meet. And then we'll show you their clips, and then we'll talk for a minute about where they are now.
The accessibilities in a rural area is hard because if there was another alternative schooling, that would have been probably my first go-to, but because there was no other options, there were no other schools, homeschooling really was the only option. I need that. No, that doesn't have a hole in it. Must be this one. Oh, look at you. Yay, it was right in front of my face too. Thank you. Do you need the directions on how to put the people together?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I was pushed through the system and I barely even graduated. And that doesn't make me feel confident that I would be able to teach my son. I let all that go and said, he's safer with me. At the end of the day, every scenario that I thought about was, he is safer with me.
Then he spot us on the floor and he jumped down.
Your mom brought you here?
For what?
Mommy brought you here so that we can understand what would help you best in school.
All right, are you ready for the first game? I want you to take a look at these pictures and tell me which one here goes. In the end, we did give Martin 6 different diagnoses. He really needs a more specialized placement that's really geared towards kids with language and learning disorders.
So in this space below, I want you to the best of your
Public school, unfortunately, cannot provide the education he needs. He was accepted into Stephen Gaynor, which is a specialized school. You know, they do a tour through the school, and I think he was able to interact with some kids. And he mentioned, like, there's more kids like me here.
Was dizzy, then the time Miss Chaos.
Sometimes it gets hard. Even if people don't see how hard I'm working, I would be up all night. I don't tell anybody because I don't want them to worry. Don't tell my parents.
I want people to be able to see the light in him and not the ADHD. Because people want to put you in a box, right? And sort of stigmatize you and put a label on you and this is who you are. No, that's not who he is. He's much more than that.
I had Jakor in 7th grade in my special education science class. I recognized immediately that he is super creative in the way that he learns. Jakor is on a great path to be fully included.
Young people who engage in inclusive education benefit tremendously.
Jakor Parker.
I don't know any young person or adult who doesn't want to be a part of something.
Completely different stories. Rex, his mom was diagnosed in her 40s with autism. And she knew that he was autistic and had learning difficulties, but she couldn't get help from her school district. She advocated, she did everything she could to bring universal design to the district. She gave talks about her own situation. She tried so hard, and then one day, right after we had filmed, she's picking him up at school, and she gets a knock on the car window. And right in front of him, they say, he's not doing well in class, and he's doing it on purpose. That was the last time she went into that school with him. This is a mom who barely got through school herself, who lives in rural north Vermont, where there's no private school, no other public school, nothing. And so this mom is homeschooling her son, right? And he's doing great. He's actually doing great. We're going back to see him next week, and he's reading, and he's starting to come out of his shell because he's feeling like he's being seen and he's safe for the first time. So that's that story. Martine, his mom adopted him by herself, and he was addicted to cocaine and had fetal alcohol syndrome and wasn't getting the help he needed in public school in New York. Child Mind Institute does free testing in Harlem for kids who need the services. It's an amazing program. It's available to anyone in the country if you can wait 9 months on the waiting list. She waited, she got him in, she litigated, and he is now at a school that costs most students $90,000 a year. He's going free because she was fierce. Both moms fierce. This is the story that's coming through in all of these. The parents are fierce advocates for their kids. So I'm going back to see him in the new school in about 10 days. I can't wait. Jakor is in an inclusive school district. What that means is, instead of having self-contained classes where the kids are pulled out into special ed, the resource teachers and special ed teachers come in and co-teach. See that. The other thing that happened very recently is that he was sitting in the hall drawing, and his art teacher saw him and said, "You're not in an art class." Now he's in an art class in the high school with this teacher as a mentor. It's mentors and parents like theirs that really make the difference. Sadly, not everybody has parents like that, right? And so what you're going to see in the next 3 stories are adults, and all of them had really challenging childhoods, and all of them have succeeded because of finding solutions that help them. Some of them on their own, some of them in a system that helped them. So you'll see these, and then we'll break.
The specter of imprisonment is always right there. Bumping into that lifestyle was like, it's almost inevitable. I think my first run-in with police was probably when I was like 8, and that's traumatizing for a child. They put you in handcuffs and, you know, the little scare straight stuff. That kind of stuff leads you to believe that's what you're worth. I'm what they consider hyperactive. I got put on Ritalin and I think it was Thorazine. I never really struggled in any of my classes. I think my whole thing was just behavioral. My problems just stem from me not having any type of positive influences in my life to help steer me in a way that wouldn't have landed me here where I am today in prison. I was in CMC, California Men's Colony. Then I ended up reading San Quentin News for the first time, and I'm like, wow. So I was like, man, I made it a point to myself to make it here, to San Quentin. So when I got here, I made a beeline to the media center. The editor-in-chief at the time, he saw my ambition of coming down there every day. So he pulled me in as an intern for the video department, learning cameras, learning editing, all the things like that, right? So I fell in love. It's the first time in a long time, 1, I haven't felt alone in prison. 2, it's the first time in a long time where I felt like I have a purpose to promote social justice and advance rehabilitation efforts. San Quentin News has given me that hope that, yeah, one of these days I will make it home.
San Quentin News, real voices from the inside.
Governor Gavin Newsom has visited San Quentin State Prison to talk about his historic decision to turn San Quentin into a rehabilitation center.
Thank you, all of you, for taking the time to be here. Thank you. Good to see some familiar faces. And by the way, brother, you touched my heart, man. You said something. Young man who spent the last few years desperate to get to San Quentin, somewhere else in the prison system, lost, and was reading about San Quentin News and was so inspired by the work they were doing. And he finally got here and did everything he could to leverage his way in, just bothering folks up there saying, come on, you gotta let me in, let me in, let me in. And you said something that, boy, just, hit home. You said that when you saw that first byline and your name was on it, and you sent it right home to your mom, and you said it was one of the first times she was proud of me. That says something, just this notion of feeling pride, feeling loved, and you did that on your own. And that's a hell of a story.
The crazy thing about prison is that it's a dark place, but at the same time, if you're looking for the light, you can find light in prison, right? In the aggregate, it's not really about going home or not going home. It's about who you are as a person. I've been out 3 months right now, so I'm 42 years old, and we don't live forever, right? So I'm really just focused on how I can use everything that I learned in them 17 years of being incarcerated to elevate myself into a better person. How can I use that now to give back to my community? That's my whole purpose.
I remember struggling to read. There was a point in middle school, I think,
where I literally felt like people in my classes had other classes that I didn't know about, like secret classes, because they just knew things. I graduated from high school with a 1.4 GPA for all 4 years. I was 34 when I got diagnosed. I went into the doctor's office and I was like, it's not like I have ADHD or anything. I just can't read that well and I'm hoping you can help me. Went on this whole rant. And then when she came back to give me my diagnosis, she's like, yes, you do have ADHD and you also have reading stuff. It's kind of unlikely I would be a great candidate for school board. I'm one of those kids that basically the school system didn't capture that they were still capable. The budget needs to match the values. I want to change what people see as valuable. A lot of people that serve on school boards, they don't always trust the input of everyday people or people that are negatively impacted. I feel like my strength is meeting people where they are. I really want my seat to be everybody's seat. When the election results came out and I got on the board, I panicked because I was like terrified about what that would mean and whether or not I could actually do it. I think one of the things that built my confidence is definitely my circle of friends, my family, but also doing the work. I've really leaned into professional development. Using my tools has really helped me, so I've kind of had to pull in my accessibility and be my own advocate to make sure that I can navigate what the role requires. Because I have a door that I've just kicked open, and I want to hold it open for people like me or kids like me to see themselves in leadership. All things should be accessible in education at the highest level, under the assumption that anyone with any challenge could be there. If you do make all the supports for kids that have some of the biggest challenges, everybody benefits. Overall, I just want to inspire other folks to not just be neurodivergent in leadership roles, but have the audacity to say they're neurodivergent in leadership roles. If all of us knew each other existed, what would it look like for us to show up as ourselves?
Human beings are wired for connection, and when people are isolated and they don't have community, that fundamentally is bad for health. Many would say this is radical to gather with your patients on a Saturday morning and make art in the parking lot, but you know, to us, this is part of healthcare. I'm the parent of a now 7-year-old, multiply neurodivergent child. The circumstances of homeschooling my then 3-year-old while caring for patients in the hospital and taking care of patients in clinic and really very sleep deprived, I entered a state of neurodivergent burnout. I got my autism diagnosis in the context of being profoundly depleted and exhausted. Really, I avoid healthcare most of the time, and that is the experience of many neurodivergent people. There needed to be a centralized place to really think about a person and all the different ways that you can wrap around and try to support someone. So All Brains Belong is pioneering a new model for healthcare where we integrate medical care into social connection, helping people make friends, helping people access employment, and training the surrounding community about how to be inclusive of people with all types of brains. I'm really excited for you to be here for our community storytelling at our 3rd annual Community Health Education Fair. Just as you would aspire for universal design for learning or universal design for architecture, why not universal design for healthcare? For a lot of people, they have spent such a long time in their lives trying to fit in and contort themselves to show up in a just so way so that people would like them or not make fun of them or not exclude them. To me, belonging means that there's a person or people that you can show up authentically with, that you don't need to change who you are in order to feel comfortable, appreciated, valued for your unique gifts. My hope is that we can normalize neurodiversity, that we can normalize that we all have different brains and different brains have different needs, and that we can design environments that account for that, and that we have language for people to be able to express their needs.
About how much fun I had and how much more
How profoundly normal would that be to acknowledge that everyone has needs?
So these are 3 adults who have amazing stories, who've made their way on their own, and didn't have easy childhoods or easy ways of getting to where they are now. Different than the kids that we followed. Does anybody have any questions at this point about the stories that we just saw? I'll tell you that Dante was going to be here tonight, but he is at Chowchilla Women's Prison hosting a film festival, so he couldn't be here, which is kind of thrilling, right? Yeah. And Ashley is running for another term, and Mel, I'm going to see in a couple of weeks because she and Summer, the mom, are working together, but I've never had them in the same room at the same time. And so to make their story complete, Summer is going to share all the different ways that Mel has changed her life, right? It's just, I mean, it makes me cry just looking at them now because I've been with them for 2 years watching their stories evolve. Was there, yeah, Shauna.
So,
the stories are very rich, and they're like a jewel box. There's so many different, the differences are wonderful. As a kind of an abnormal neurotypical, I guess, I don't know. I puzzle about how I interact with neurodiverse people, how I gain intelligence about that, how I learn from my experience or not. And I wonder if there is, are some pictures in this film about neurotypicals engaging that other world and coming out of their fear and coming out of their conformity to try to build bridges.
That's a really wonderful question, and I wish I could fully answer it. I can't, but I'll say a couple of things. One is, I love that you use the word bridging, because it really is about bridging. 2 is that I guarantee you that you interact with neurodiverse people much more than you know. Because 1 out of 5 people is either dyslexic, ADHD, autistic on some aspect of the spectrum or something. 1 out of 5 people is neurodivergent, at least, right? So all of us, and I said this in the promo that went out, everyone here, I guarantee you, has a neurodiversity story. Whether it's your child, your uncle, your nephew, whenever I tell people what I'm working on, it just happened today at the protest, oh, my nephew, and I'm just like, no, I know. But that said, it's really a good question, and I'm going to have 2 people join me on the stage who will share some of that with you, okay? But I want to tell you that, excuse me, sorry, you know, one of the things that is so valuable about inclusive education, which was the 3rd story in the education system, is where the kids that used to be in special ed are being brought into the classroom. It's not just good for them that they're learning with their peers. It's good for their neurotypical learners to learn with them, so that when they go out into the world, there's not this dichotomy about who is who, right? It shouldn't be like that. It should be inclusive everywhere. And I want to say one other thing. You know, John, who you saw in a couple of things, who talks about othering, he makes a strong case about using the word belonging more than inclusion, because the term inclusion immediately sets up the notion of exclusion. And belonging is more encompassing, and that's why he wrote a book about bridging, because it's really It goes beyond. And I know that we're in a really difficult environment to even conceive of that right now. I mean, even just on the way here tonight, I was listening to the demise of NEH and NEA, who funded my last film, right? I mean, now there's nothing like that anymore. It's anyone who's in the arts or humanities is suffering, right? Or science, right? All of it. So what I'd like to do is bring up two remarkable human beings who are neurodivergent, accomplished, brilliant, and wonderful, who'll answer some of your questions and share their stories with you. So I'd like to invite Dr. Nicole Ofish and Davis Finch to come on up here and join me. And before we start talking, I'm going to show you one last clip. Have a seat, any of the seats you want. This is Davis. This is Nicole. And Nicole is, I have to look. This is terrible. Because you have a title that I want to get right. A cognitive and behavioral scientist who specializes in neurodiversity and executive function. She's the former executive director of Schwab Brain Center, and she's the president and founder of Brain Explained, which she'll tell you about. Okay. Davis Finch has been on the Coast Side all of his life. Not all your life? I didn't know that. Okay. And he is part of the Square Peg community. How many of you here know about Square Peg? Wow. Ooh, all right. Well, be that as it may, we're going to show you a minute of Davis at Square Peg before we start talking, just so you can get the context of how Davis fits into the community here. Davis, you want to tell us about Square Peg and your involvement there?
Yes, so I've been in various positions, but I started with Square Peg in October 2011, so it's been coming up on 15 years. And yeah, it was initially just about the horses, still is to an extent, but it's also a community now, or it's always been, but now it's like one of many through programs with the regional center where a lot of people are neurodivergent with various challenges are working there. And it's very good what we have going now.
What makes it really special to you? What kind of relationships are the most meaningful?
A lot of it is, Joelle Dunlap is the director. She couldn't be here tonight, but she's going to work with, she's an incredible woman she's going to reach out. But now we also have a bunch of much younger staff members who are also great dealing with people and about dealing with challenging situations in ways that are are both dignity but also difficult but in many ways, horse people actually have a bit of an advantage because, like, due to my size, some people, if I get tense or nervous, and get scared. But people who work with horses, they have to deal with like 1,000-pound animals. So there's like nothing I do is really going to scare them. Yes.
That's a really interesting point. I never thought of that one. Yeah. Cool. I love the relationship you have with Curtis. It seems to be really special. That's the horse that you...
Yes, that's the horse in the clips that should be in the film in the end. The most recent one, I mean, I thought about it. In the almost 15 years I've been there, I've gotten on like 21 different horses and had 7 main horses. But even up there, it's like Curtis is him and this other horse named Panzer we had, like for much of the past decade. But these horses where I feel like we can connect on an emotional level, and I can feel what he's feeling, and like it's like, oh, it's an incredible. And with the few horses I can do that with. But that's like the epitome, or the very best part of working with horses, when you can connect. And also, when you're on their back, even if they're big, you are dependent on the horse for your safety. So it creates an environment that, like, no other, really.
I know one of the things Joelle said, I don't know if it was in an interview or in a conversation about horses can't lie. Like they're quintessentially inherently honest. And so there's no bullshit.
Yeah, there's plenty of horse shit. But no bullshit. It's like if they're not feeling well, you can get it. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. And then you have to figure out, like, but yeah, typically they'll tell you when they're off, but it's also on you to listen. Because if you don't, that can be bad.
So how does your relationship with horses translate into how you might move in the world? Functioning like outside of the ranch.
I mean, with horses, it's funky. One thing also that I noticed with horses, but when I'm on the horse, in many places, that's like the place where I'm most present. And even working with horses, it's like when I'm not with horses, I'm by myself a lot, but my thoughts can drive me crazy, frankly. But it's like so I guess anytime horses or anytime when I'm interacting, it's like I have to be present, be real in a way that I can't. But it's tiring too. Anyway, it's like, yeah. But actually, I might bring up too that seeing some of the storylines made me think to like my own schooling. Because I went to a high school that was specially called Orion Academy. It was pretty new at the time in the first decade of the 2000s. And it was specifically for teenagers, high school students who had on the autism spectrum or NLD or various things. But it was an interesting dynamic because we were all the others. We were all the abnormal, and it just saw a lot of interesting dynamics there because it's like most people there had bad experiences with public schools. So there was like a lot of that. And so that's like, yeah. I mean, I was in a great public school called Claire Lilienthal in San Francisco, K through 8. But then after that, it's like I looked at high schools and none of the ones in the city could serve me. So I found a more specialized school, which had ups and downs, but ultimately was taught me a lot about neurodivergence and what happens when everyone is. And it's interesting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nicole is also an advisor on the project, and very helpful advisor, a wonderful thought partner, but tell us your own journey in this world of neurodiversity.
So I've just recently, I'd say in the last 10 years, and I'm in my 60s, started talking about my dyslexia and growing up. Probably because when I was in school, there was no recognition of dyslexia and learning disabilities. So for individuals like myself, you were just not school material, you just weren't college material, right? That was just how it is. The special education was for people who had visual impairments or were blind, or at the time called mental retardation, or had another kind of more physical, overt physical disability that you can see. So I had an awful school experience. And, it's funny when people read a bio now, do keynotes around the world, and I invited to guest lecture in the School of Medicine, the School of Engineering at Stanford, and I teach here and there, taught all over the country. And people assume I was a tenured professor at the University of Arizona, and any of you know Research One universities, that means you have to publish and write a lot. And when people hear that, they just assume it was this kind of privileged, easy, highly educated household I grew up in, and it wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. My mom actually barely graduated from high school, which I found out many years later. She's still alive. She's 92. So school was an awful experience, and I recently found report cards at my parents' house. And I'm looking at my grades thinking, I should add these into my bio, because it really completes the picture perfectly well. And it's a great neurodiversity story. At the time, I remember, those of you in my age or in the 50s, you'll remember in your high school counseling office, they had the postcards you could tear off where you wanted to go to college. You would mail it in and they would send you a brochure. And I remember peeling a few off in my junior year and going in to talk to my college counselor, and he said, "You're not college material." Not at all. But you can go to College of San Mateo or Skyline, and they have a great program where you can learn how to do hair or nails. This is no joke. This is like no joke. And I'm thinking, okay, I could probably have a manicure, but I don't want to do that, right? That's not what I want to do. But the irony is that I was often called by my teachers in class to help people understand the concepts. So the problem-solving skills were atypically higher than the rest of the individuals in the class. Conceptual reasoning, atypically higher than the rest of the students in the class. The analytical thinking, I was often accused of plagiarism because I could make connections where no one was making the connections, but they were so blatantly obvious to me, I couldn't figure out why no one else had made these connections. And then they tell you, well, show your work. Explain to me how. Well, I don't think in words. Most of us think in language, and I think in pictures. So I've seen the whole movie by the time someone came out with a sentence. And then, so for individuals who, like myself, there's many different types of atypical strengths that develop in many people with dyslexia. And narrative reasoning and pictorial reasoning and making connections is one of them. But it's very hard because teachers will say, show me your work or explain it to me, and you're thinking, God help me, I have to tell you the whole story that just went through my head that is so rich and nuanced and colorful, and the intonation and the innuendo, and that's how a lot of us get to these ideas. But it was hell. School was hell. Because children look at their report card. And I guarantee you, having been in this field for 40 years, they're telling each other at 7 and 8 years old how they are being rated in school. And they compare each other to one another. And they already have there's this unspoken awareness that this report card is going to be this reflection of me and all the opportunity I have in my life. And I think if there's one thing, I can just tell you, I just got lucky with mentors along the way, because it was hellacious. A lot of anxiety, depression growing up, just never ever wondering if you could fit in. And then all of a sudden you'll find somebody, a professor, who just says, "Oh my gosh, I need you to help me teach this. Like, you just have it." And you're thinking, but somebody's got to read this to me. But I really want people to understand, when they work with children, that children think school is a life sentence. Because I'm glad I'm kind of because you don't know yet what it's like. I mean, you have to go to school, it's the law. You don't know what it's like to have a life where you get to make decisions about when, even if you go to school, when do I take this class? If I want to sleep late, I'll take them later in the day. If I want to take the class all at once, I'll take this one class for 3 hours in a block, or I can take it Monday, Wednesday, Friday for an hour. I can choose what I like. If reading is intense, I'll load up my class with non-reading intensive classes and work with people to get it that way. But children don't know that. They don't know that autonomy of choice. So it's your time for it's not forever. So there's so much we can do. That normal, abnormal thing is very interesting, because despite all of this, I never thought I was abnormal. I just thought it was my unlucky day over and over again. And then I just got lucky.
So I want to open the floor to questions. If you have any questions of our guests, any questions of me about the film or the stories you saw of the 3 adults, or anything else that you want to ask. In the back there on the... Can we dim the lights a little bit there?
Thank you. I have 2 kids that are neurodivergent. Probably am a little bit myself too. I'm sorry, the speaker on the right, that's fine. What? Davis. You mentioned something that has struck a chord with me, and I've thought before. In your time at Orion, you were with other kids, you were with the other others, right? And my kids have been in similar settings, and it actually has been helpful for them to know they are not the only one on this journey. Specifically, especially in the mental health realm, knowing other kids are not have life so hard they don't necessarily want to be around, or they're raging, or they just don't get the rest of the world. Getting to connect with people that get your path is critical. And I worry a little bit, and I want to know what your thoughts are. When we push for inclusion, sometimes we're diluting out people that are similarly quirky, similarly interested in, let's say, bugs. You kind of dilute out the special interests from finding each other, and I think we have to be careful to push inclusion so much that those people don't get the time to find each other.
In line with where I've worked in different things, where it's a balancing act, like both are needed to an extent. Because we do want, having people who both work with these issues can be helpful, but then again, few things one problem that sometimes occurred at like Orion is that people would think all these people who have similar diagnoses are all very much alike, when often that's not at all the case. People can have similar diagnoses, but in many other ways be very, very different. And when people think that, but about inclusion, I mean, for me, it's also because until high school, I was in a normal classroom with but with an A. And in many ways, it's like both styles have their positives and negatives. And I think that ultimately we do want to, you're making a mistake if you go too heavy on either end. If you go so heavy on inclusion that people don't know other people like them, that's a problem. Never really was for me though, but at the other side, if you go too heavy on the other way, then people can forget how to be like with society. So I think ultimately it's a balancing act that both have their pluses. And just you need to balance some of each.
So I'm Davis's dad, and this is his mom. And I just want to say one thing that's been amazing about having a son like Davis, you learn as they're growing up to surround yourself with people that don't just tolerate your child, but embrace who they are and what they have to bring. And like the Joel Dunlaps of this world and others. And I guess the question, Davis, would be, have you felt that love and support through the years?
From a lot of the people who come in, yes, through many, but again, often it's sometimes people who have the credentials can be not as good as they should be, and people, or like they're so book smart or so in education that they forget how to, if you're teaching to the rubric and not the humanity. But then at the same time you get other people who maybe don't have but are just great, and like Joel, other people who, and there are definitely people out there who that's good.
I think that's one thing that's really special about your story, because you're an academic who also experiences the other side of it. I mean, it's really
So I grew up with a neurodivergent brother, and something that he has struggled with even as an adult, and something that he's finally kind of getting a grasp on, is just being behind everyone else. And something that him and I have often conversations about is like the school system itself really didn't exist 150 years ago. Like, it's not something that is inherent to humans and our evolution and just who we are and the years of cultures that we've amassed across all of different peoples. And my question is for the film, because realistically, like, school systems only actually capture and strengthen a small portion of the population. And I'm wondering, is there a way to kind of, draw attention to that? Like, say, something that we take for quote unquote normal is so abnormal to our history as in our humanity. I don't know.
I mean, I think what we're trying to do, because education is one system that we're looking at in the film, but of course everything begins in the home and in the classroom. I mean, our earliest memories besides home are that first report card or whatever's happening in school. And so we're trying to give, these different stories that give different perspectives. I agree that inclusion isn't the full answer. I mean, what I'm coming away with, because we're also looking at healthcare and prison reform and public policy, we're looking at other systems. And what keeps coming up across the board is universal design. That is the umbrella that I think covers everything that we're looking at. And what universal design, and it's being expressed in different ways by different people, is providing an environment where someone is challenged in ways that allow them to grow, and the challenges grow as the person grows. And it accommodates the needs of each individual. And so, this word inclusion can be tricky when it comes to a school. Just like you're talking about, there is this balancing act. And I think, universal design, it's a soft word. I'll tell you that the last interview I plan to do, there's 2 interviews after this next Catching Stories that I'm going to do. One is with a scientist who actually looks at brains and shows us that there's no such thing as a normal brain, right? And he can see where the dyslexic brain is, where it's triggering when someone's trying to read, or where it's triggering when someone's trying to focus. Like, we're actually going to see that. And the other is the person that runs the organization where they invented universal design for learning, to talk about how that concept, that philosophy really covers everything. And it has this same feeling as embrace difference for me. Not belong, not include, but embrace. It's a different concept. And I'm no expert. I can say that I've been a witness to this subject, beginning as a researcher for 10 years now. And I'm learning every day, So all I'm trying to do is point the lens in the right place so I can capture the stories that give a rich story. And that's why tonight's so important, because I'm hearing from a community where I feel comfortable being vulnerable, what matters? What do you care about? What are the questions that you want answered in something like this? And I'll tell you one other thing, even though I planted the question in the audience, I'll tell you what he was going to ask. Because it's not just a film. A film is a 90-minute storytelling experience. But what's more important than the film is the impact campaign. And what the impact campaign is, we're going to take the film apart into modules, and each module will have a curriculum, and that's my background is writing curriculum and textbooks and stuff, so I know how to do that. And basically, there'll be a component on healthcare, a component on education, a component on public policy, where we take this into legislatures, we take it into prisons, we take it into universities, where we try to instill ideas that change policies, that get people inspired to look at things differently. So that, and it's an uphill battle right now, granted, right? But by the time we're done with the impact campaign and ready to launch it, maybe things will be coming down the other side of the hill. I don't know. But the impact campaign is really important. And while this is not a fundraiser, if you do want to support the project, you can go to futureofnormal.org and you can support it or follow it. I'm not on social media yet, but the project will be, because the impact campaign will be launching at the beginning of 2027. And that's where we would love to hear from all of you about where we can bring this and to whom we can bring this in your different areas of whatever you do, whether it's education, criminal justice, healthcare, public, anything like that, And question in the back.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I'd like to comment that I really appreciate you bringing this project to life and being able to bring concern about our education system and people who are left undiagnosed or been diagnosed like that. I have a story along with a few people I found online. I have a similar story where we'd be able to ace elementary school with flying colors up until I was up against like a learning curve in like middle school. I think either it was like pre-algebra or I was up against making my own essay. I struggled with like going through like that process, and instead of I don't know, maybe I had symptoms of like ADHD, but instead of being diagnosed, they told me that I was probably, or according to like my old records, like back in like previous grades, they said, I was just making excuses and maybe I'm just too lazy or too stupid. And I didn't accept those terms up until like high school. I had these wonderful teachers that are able to recognize the symptoms and are willing to help me through it, like during class or an after-school program that helped me be able to graduate high school or without struggling. And I really appreciate that you, or that hopefully the education system will be able to be aware of this issue and be able to fix it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have a question there and one there. Who raised their hand? Oh.
I really enjoyed your presentations. I'm a retired teacher, public school, had 20 to 80 students in each class, in the many classes. There's only 24 hours in the day. So I was curious for both of your perspectives. What were some characteristics of teachers that really helped you the most?
That's a great question. You want to take that? You got your mic.
I think that when a teacher sees that a student is struggling and does what they can to get support for that child is super important. I have a lot of compassion and empathy for teachers just for the reason that you say. But the ones that saw me knew something was not working the same way as the rest of the kids in the class and said something to someone else who could get me help that I needed in the moment. And I think it's important to be noticed and not be just passed off and judged.
I kind of agree similarly to what she said. At the same time, it's different because, as I said, like to compare teachers when I was in the full inclusion, grade, and then at the specialty high school, they're different situations. Because at specialty high school, it was like 8 students to a class, but they all are neurodivergent. So that's kind of trying to see, but up until then, yes, even in elementary school, like a good teacher would, be able to see when someone's struggling and try to figure out with other class, try to get them the help they need rather than just passing them off to the next grade, as she said, because that in some cases is, I get why it might be done, but it's probably one of the worst things you could do with a kid who's really struggling. And definitely, another thing I hear is behavior problems I think, in some cases they might be. I think a lot of times behavioral problems are actually clues to a neurological difference or something that needs to be addressed rather than, or I would have problems with anxiety that would show up sometimes as behavioral, but really it's anxiety.
That is super important. I often, when I teach teachers, because I teach in different teacher education programs, I often say to teachers, kids don't usually lay in bed in the morning and think, lie in bed in the mornings, that's my dyslexia, and think, what am I going to do to piss my teacher off? I mean, really, they want to get along. They really want to fit in. And sometimes it's just what you said, misbehavior, the task is too easy, it's too hard, or they're upset about something, there's something else going on. I also think we are not preparing teachers with what they need. And oftentimes we send teachers into the classroom completely ill-equipped. We're still not even teaching. We're making this movie about the brain, but we're not even teaching teachers about the neuroscience of the brain. And I often quote something I read in a book several years ago where it says, teaching children without an understanding of the brain is like building a bridge without an understanding of engineering. It is an inherent part of the teaching learning process. And when you are aware of how the brain is working, then you are aware of what someone is doing that is atypically great. We also have to rethink the environment. Tonight even, we've been talking about people. Am I normal? Am I abnormal? What's up with me? What's the diagnosis? What happened to me? Why aren't we talking about the environment? Just like we created curb cuts in universal design, said for the built-in brain, let's create curb cuts. Well, guess what? Most of the people that use curb cuts are not wheelchair users. Text-to-speech, speech-to-text were designed for people with disabilities. Most people that use them are not who they were designed to meet the needs of. That's universal design. So when we start thinking about teaching as informational access, the way we're providing access on a sidewalk or into a building, and build our classrooms with that in mind, I think it creates more opportunities for teachers to meet students where they are. And that's something that we need to work towards. It's in our federal legislation, it still is universal design. We just have to bridge that gap to practice.
I think there was a question right there.
Hi. You brought up the environmental aspect. I also wonder what your thoughts are about the sort of gendered aspect of figuring out and diagnosing autism. I wasn't diagnosed until a couple years ago, and I'm in my mid-30s. And it's because I was really smart in school. I was able to mask really well. A lot of my behavioral things I was told, and a lot of any AFAB assigned female at birth people are told it's hormonal. It's your period. It's your menstrual cycle. So I think everyone I know who is AFAB or identifies as a woman were diagnosed later in life because of those kinds of things. Then it's education, it's healthcare, it's environment. So I guess what kind of parameters do you see moving forward for us to start recognizing and diagnosing people and getting them support they need when they don't necessarily fit under what we're taught to identify as? Yeah.
I would actually like to, some interesting things on this topic is Orion Academy in high school, it was heavily male. And but just like mostly boys, like the girls would be different. They were out there, but they wouldn't get diagnosed like the boys and would have different things. The second thing that made me think is Square Peg community includes a lot of like gender fluid people, I feel. And more so, it seems to be much greater than in the general community. Like those types of people are drawn to us, probably because of the same reason. Great. We're good for me and people who are otherwise neurodivergent, dignity and stuff, but it is same.
I think, from the stories that we tell in the film, Mel, the physician, was only diagnosed because she had a meltdown when her 3-year-old son was diagnosed. And Summer was a patient in Mel's clinic, and she had a principal tell her that he thought she was autistic, and she went and she got her diagnosis, both women in their 40s. And because women are better at masking, women are better at hiding it, at coping, at being who they think they're supposed to be. This is what I'm hearing. I'm not saying this because I read it in the book. This is what I've been hearing from all the people I've talked to on this project. And I think that the more we become aware, there's all this stuff right now in the public about why are so many people autistic now when they weren't before? Well, that's bullshit. I'm sorry. It's not horseshit. It's bullshit. But, there was a great New York Times piece about that, written by a father of an autistic son, well-known psychologist, Richard Ruff. I can find it if anyone wants it, but the bottom line is, it's always been here. It's that people are hiding it, masking it, not knowing about it, because the autism that we used to know about was the severe, nonverbal, and then it was the Asperger's, and who cares? It's a spectrum. And the thing is, neurodiversity is a spectrum. All cognitive functioning is a spectrum, right? And it's where do you fit on it? And I don't think the labels matter. It's understanding that there is this spectrum of cognitive variability that we need to understand and have compassion for and embrace, and be able to accommodate the needs. So, I mean, when I got like dialed into, really committed to this project, it was understanding that it is not the individuals who need to be fixed. It is the broken systems. I mean, it's obvious to everyone in this room. It's not obvious to everyone, right? And that's the burden of this film. I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but we're chipping away at it. But I do feel like that's the most important thing that we can accomplish, is raising awareness that cognitive variability is a natural phenomenon, just like biodiversity. And if you start doing research, you'll see it everywhere as you're reading. So yeah, there's someone in the back. I could get on a soapbox and go, but you raised a really great question. Thank you.
Hi, I am a special education teacher, and I've worked across multiple states. And I have 2 neurodivergent pairs in my classroom who are brilliant. The other people, other teachers, mainstream teachers, don't understand them, but I do. And I put them to good use. It's wonderful. I've worked in all types with dyslexia and different types of disabilities. And my question is, I invited one of my parents to come with me, but he was going to the Giants game and he didn't think he could make it. He said it's at 4:15 and I just can't think I can make it at that time. But please come back with something that can help me, because there are teachers that don't understand them, and I talk to the principals. She says to me, what am I going to do in this situation? And I say, well, give them to me. I'll take them, But they don't understand them. So I guess when he asked me that, I said, well, what am I going to come back to tell him that will help him? So I guess it would be good if you could tell me something that would help him, or tell me how you feel when people don't understand you. I guess that would help me understand, because I do talk to them sometimes and they do have a lot of anxiety. I do too, so, I mask it for overachievement, but, they talk to me about anxiety. So that would be my question. How can I tell him what could help him understand situations that non-neurodivergent people are reacting to them?
And the him you're talking about is the para?
There's 2 paras, and they're both males, and they're in my class. They recently came to my class to help me. I have a special day class, but I teach it more like a resource class, and I try to push them out into inclusion if possible.
Got it.
Yeah, and that's idea. That's the law. We're supposed to do that. So, but yeah. So yeah. Thank you. I don't know if I made it clear, but.
I don't really know much about this. I just know anxiety is challenging, and so if you can work with them and you get it, like I said, with all the people who helped, if you're one of those people, maybe talk to them and see maybe you should discuss deeper with them about, see if they'll open up to you about trying to figure out where they belong, or just try to help them. I don't really know much about the technicals, so all I know is anxiety. It's useful if someone understands it's anxiety and tries to offer dignified assistance.
I think it's really helpful for individuals when they, I hope I'm answering your question, find themselves in a situation where they're being misunderstood, to ask, is there something I can say to help you understand where I'm going with this? Is there, are you following me, or should we talk about it later? Sometimes the anxiety creates silence, And you need to simply pause, respect the anxiety, the difference, and find a few sentences that you always keep in your pocket to facilitate the next part of the conversation. One of the things, or even say, give me a minute. I had to learn a long time ago to say, give me a minute. I'm thinking about that. Because people would think I'm just not talking and I'm done talking, but I was just processing it. And the anxiety slows you down more. So I had to learn to say, give me a minute. I'm thinking, and then take the minute. So what? People have to wait for you, but at least you're helping people manage the expectations of the conversation, I think is super important for neurodiverse people. And then always having a couple phrases that you can use to start a conversation, to start a sentence, to exit a sentence, just a few things that reduce the anxiety. That can be really helpful. And let him know that this movie is moving the needle and things are going to get better. And they're getting better all the time. They really are.
From your mouth to God's ears. We have one last clip. It's only a minute. And the reason I want to share it is I just last week interviewed a neuroscientist at UCSF who's doing some extraordinary, really innovative work, which will be in the film. And I asked him 3 questions. And we have a camera in the back room. And anyone who's interested in answering those same 3 questions, we would be delighted to hear your answers. And you could end up in the film or in the Impact campaign or on social media related to the film if you're interested. And this is an experiment, just like everything else tonight. I hope it's going okay so far. But we do have this one last thing. And I'm not trying to feed you what you should say, but I thought his answers were so cool that I wanted to share them with you. So this is the 3 questions about normal.
I feel like we get caught up in normal because it's easy and simple to think in terms of averages. The human brain loves to simplify things, categorize them. This brain area does that type of people does this, but it's not how the real world works. Frequently, no one's normal, right? No one's really hitting the average. The average is a convenient tool that we use to simplify, but it's misleading and it results in a lot of confusion when we think that that is the ideal. It is just the average. I would say that the opposite of normal is you. It's what defines your identity and makes you unique, and it's something to be treasured to not be normal. Yeah, my hope for the future of normal is that we see it for what it is, as an average. That's not an ideal. That we embrace our differences and learn how to thrive and function in a way that makes us happy.
Does anybody have anything else before we end for the night? Or yes? Okay. Shout it out.
Sorry. They just dumped the word normal. Because normal comes, the word norm and all that. Just a plateau of flatness. And I think everybody is neurodivergent. I think everybody has some sort of special that they can do. Maybe they don't know about it. I had big behavior problems in school. I got so many F's, I decided to call it fantastic. And was lucky enough to have an art teacher that guided me down a path. And he, Mr. McGill, he had a really gift hand that everybody in his junior high school made a lot of fun of this guy. And I felt really sorry for him. So he spent some time with me, and he really helped guide me on the path of doing art. And it sort of paid off through the rest of my life. But the behavioral thing, which is trying to get attention. That's all it's about.
Right. I mean, there are so many stories from so many people who have, either been saved by a mentor or screwed up by someone who really didn't get them, right? For all of it. And one of the best books is called Normal Sucks. I mean, it's written by a guy who's an advocate. He was flunked out of school and told that he'd never amount to anything, ended up going to Brown and has written several books. And there's so many stories like that. It's really about being seen. And I think one of the most challenging things about being neurodivergent is that it's not invisible, it's not apparent. It's less apparent than a physical disability. And so people expect you to be normal because they can't see it. And that's the hurdle for a lot of people, right? So when there's all these fancy be nice to everyone cards, which is, which say sometimes, you don't know what someone's going through unless you really get inside their own shoes, right? So the fewer assumptions we make and the more we really try to see and listen and understand, the better our world will be, right? That's what it boils down to. So thank you so much for being a part of this live.